All right, thank you for that. Most certainly appreciate it. And shout out to Elizabeth Luker yet again for her donation. She says, I've enjoyed all the callers tonight. Great calls and points. A deep show, so I thought we could use a little thought to lighten it up. Megyn Kelly has sunk to a new low. The Jerry Springer show. Hey, bless it. And some laughing emojis. Thank you for that donation. And the hilarious thing about Megyn Kelly doing Springer, I really appreciate you for your support as always. All right, Ramon, what's happening?
Hey, Anthony, what's up?
Not too much.
Okay, we're going to do a little talk about feminism. But first, have you heard about anything that's happening up in Canada with there's like an election there, and remember that coked up mayor that was he died a couple years ago?
Yeah, Rob Ford.
Yeah, so his brother Doug is running for the Prime Minister of Ontario.
Yes.
So a lot of people are like saying that he's a full-on clown. So I don't know if there's any Canadians out there in the chat. I don't know if they can kind of chime in on that, because I don't see what's the problem with him.
Well, we were talking about this earlier, actually. Elizabeth, not Elizabeth. Liza Jean was on the line earlier, and she was talking about it. She actually said that Rob Ford, crack aside, was actually a good guy, because the thing about Rob Ford is that he was not like part of the Justin Trudeau type, globalist type. He was just a different kind of person, and his brother is running. So that may actually be kind of a good thing, because these people would be in there. You're talking about Canada, some of the craziest laws. You might go to jail for hate speech. Cultural appropriation might get you locked up. So he's not that, basically. But he may not be all the way what people are wanting as far as a savior is concerned.
Well, I think he's dead, so...
Yeah, but his brother, that is, Doug.
Oh, okay. Doug.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't understand why people have such a big problem with it. Maybe it's because, like you said, they've become too adapted to, the soft Canadian politicians, and not like, when I grew up, I thought Canadians are more like Terrence and Phillip, and they'd fart all over each other or whatever. Could it be that I've been misled? I don't know.
Maybe so.
Media just deceives you all the time, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So I have a couple remarks before we get to the feminism. Mm-hmm. So I'm from the state of Ohio. The cardiac arrest heart of it all, as they used to call it. And big news broke out, I believe, on March 8th. That in Lorain County, Republic Steel is adding over 1,000 jobs. And I think this is the second story I see where a Midwestern steel mill is going to be growing as a result of the tariffs. So even though I'm still not sold that the tariffs are on a broader national level, they're a good idea. That development in Lorain County, which is where the steel mill is located, will probably destroy the Democratic Party in Ohio. And I say this because, there's a couple counties that are very key. They're swing counties at the moment. They used to be very, very solidly Democratic. One is Mahoning County, which is where Youngstown is. And then there's Lorain County, which is the one I was just talking about. Mm-hmm. And those are very strong manufacturing union towns. And if you start seeing, if anything happens in Youngstown, like what I'm saying is not even, like you don't even have to, take it to the bank. But, those towns were already shifting towards the Republicans and Trump in the past few election cycles because of the globalization issue and the lack of manufacturing jobs. And Lorain County especially, there's not much else going for it. Except, there are some good boating areas and a little tourism, but that's not enough to sustain a small urban population like they have over there.
That's right.
So if anything like this happens in Youngstown, they will not be able to win another race in this state, except the current senator here, Sherrod Brown, is credited with saving a number of steel jobs. A few years back when LTV Steel was going to close and a bunch of other steel mills. But I don't think that he'll be able to run against the Trump record for getting back jobs. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
It's going to be interesting if people reciprocate what's happening in terms of that job growth as far as the Republican Party, because we're still the state with John Kasich, who's basically the equivalent of a baby seal when it comes to logic and reason, and all he wants to do is get on TV.
That's right.
So in a certain sense, I wish we had like a baby seal as governor instead of him. But this is an election year, so there could be one running. So hopefully that'll happen. Other things, let me see here. The rest of the Senate map. I'm sorry to talk so much about elections, but it's getting worse for the Democrats in the Senate. I think Trump had a interesting strategy where, if there's gun control proposals on the federal level, there's a number of red state Democrats up in Montana, West Virginia, Indiana, Missouri, and North Dakota, and they're really going to have a hard time winning there if they support gun control legislation. So it's not going to get better for them if they don't seriously trend red. So that's what I'm seeing right now in terms of elections. And as for that story earlier, somebody was mentioning about the globalists being a slur for anti-Semitism. So I saw that what was it? Not yesterday, but Thursday. Somebody posted it, and it's such a joke. And what I find ironic is, I write a lot of stuff about the Anti-Defamation League, and in a few weeks I'll have something to show you from the Anti-Defamation League, like in my hands. Right. But it's on order, so we'll see when it gets here. So in any case, the Anti-Defamation League and all these people who are saying that this is veiled threats against Jews or whatever. Well, a lot of us don't believe in globalism, and a lot of us believe in our identity is centered more around their religion and the spirituality. It's not around the fact that they think that Gary Cohn, who months ago they were calling this shill and he was a sellout and whatever, and now he resigns from the administration. It's the same thing they did with Steve Bannon. If they're in the administration, they are basically Hitler, like Omarosa or Gary Cohn or anybody. There were a number of articles where I saw a number of like really left-wing people calling Gary Cohn, I think, was in the article, but Stephen Miller, they were calling him a capo, like one of these people that cooperated with the Nazis during the Holocaust or whatever. So, once they leave the administration, then they suddenly become a hero. It's the same thing that they did with James Comey. It's the same posturing all the time. And I don't know if you see the same thing. I was talking with some people last week about the way the media will just, they'll basically do what Mark Dice calls Orwell's, I think it was called Orwell's memory hole.
Yes.
Where do you watch Mark Dice at all?
I do.
So I have his book, and it's pretty good book, but I've just read a couple books about the same topic, so I'm kind of getting burnt out. But he did talk about Orwell's memory hole, where for a while they'll look at a topic along a certain theme line. They'll say, for example, soy is bad, and then all of a sudden they'll get some sort of advertising plug from, I guess, the soy industry, for example, and they'll automatically flip on it. So it's entirely governed by their commercial interests, basically.
Right.
Did you see, by the way, the Paul Joseph Watson soy face video?
I've not seen that. I gotta check it out though. I heard it was pretty
You
funny.
have to see it. It's one of the funniest things ever. Where they, I have to look at the study that he cited because I find it hard to believe, but he hasn't let me down yet. That's probably one of my favorite YouTube creators. So anyway, feminism has hit its iceberg today, and it's going down like the Titanic. Minister Farrakhan in Chicago, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. I was discussing this week with a friend of yours, Tariq, about him, who's is a great, honest person. We obviously disagree on a number of key things with Louis Farrakhan, but
right.
We had some great conversation. And have you heard about all the controversy about Minister Farrakhan?
That whole thing is kind of crazy because Farrakhan was saying the same thing since Malcolm X was living, and now all of a sudden it's like this real big issue that's in the news. I'm like, what was the issue 10 years ago, 5 years ago? I mean, he's been the same guy for like 50 years.
Well, that is exactly what me and Tariq were agreeing on.
Yeah,
and that's not the issue that I see is that they're calling him to task again for his bigoted comments towards Jews. But if you look at, this is a teaser for a video I have coming out later, probably, either overnight or in the morning. I don't care if somebody hates me, but what's going on with the Women's March and some of these people endorsing Farrakhan from the Women's March is that if you look at virtually everything he says about women, this is the opposite of a feminist. This is a guy who believes in traditional gender roles in the home.
Yes.
He's I have nothing. A lot of the things Farrakhan says are common sense things. That's why I don't really care about anything he says, even if I disagree with a lot of his religion. I think is kind of wacky, and I've researched a lot of things he said concerning Elijah Muhammad and concerning the origin of the white race. He says that they were created by a mad scientist 6,000 years ago, and things like that. So. There's plenty of things to criticize Farrakhan for, but like you said, all of his racial ideas have been the same since the 1950s.
That's right.
And the real issue that I see is that there are a number of people who they'll look at Malcolm X and they'll look at Malcolm X. I think is, for me, his book was one of the best books I read. Period. When I was a kid, it was just very well written and gave a good panorama of the whole era, growing up in, Nebraska and Detroit and going to prison and everything.
Yeah.
But what people forget is that he did break, if you actually read his book, he broke with Elijah Muhammad and by default, Louis Farrakhan. And it's alleged that along with the FBI, Farrakhan, Nation of Islam agents murdered him. So
yeah,
people who honor Malcolm X at the same time as they may pay tribute to Minister Farrakhan and his movement, and I'm talking about some of these congressmen from Chicago, it's a real contradiction there. Likewise, the people from the Women's March who, they're talking the whole time about how some men have uteruses. If you listen to Louis Farrakhan, I think he would have quite a bit of dissent to that opinion. It's really strange watching the Democrats try to basically shove every single minority group into the same bag, and I think it's finally coming apart. And I guess like my position on it is, if somebody wants to support a religious or spiritual leader, I don't know what to call him, like Farrakhan, I recognize their First Amendment right, even if I think that they're wrong. What I think is stupid is when you have people like Keith Ellison, who's apparently hid meetings that he's had with Louis Farrakhan since he denounced him in 2006.
Yeah.
And there's other congressmen that are a little more open about their relationships with him, but then they'll talk about feminism or whatever. and you know, it's tiring. It's ridiculous. You know, these people are supposed to represent communities and solve their actual issues. And you know, this I would probably get like a lot of hate from people around me for this, but you know, Louis Farrakhan might actually be a better representative than some of these congressmen for people. I mean, I'm not saying this because I would vote for him. I'm saying because he actually represents the viewpoints of a lot of the people in those communities. So
correct.
You know, for better or worse, I don't think bottom line, I don't think he's the problem in this. Even though like I think a lot of the stuff he says is nonsense. The problem is you know, this Tamika Mallory, I think is her name.
Yeah.
The Women's March representative, Linda Sarsour. These people don't. You can't do this Chinese finger trap where you try to go from the left and the right into the same feminist cesspool of hell. That's about it. I think I'm getting a little incoherent here, so I'll talk to you later, and I'll probably tune into the podcast tomorrow if you're going to have one. And keep up the good work.
Thank you for the call, man. Definitely appreciate you.
Have a good night.
All right. Thank you to Ramon for the call. That's going to be the last call of the night. If you're trying to get on